This might just be the perfect future laptop. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. I'm MacBook Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and I've got in front of me the brand new MacBook Air, the 13.6 inch. This is the redesigned version, and I've got it in the midnight, which is the colour that everyone's excited about because it's the new one. We've never had a MacBook in this kind of finish before, and it looks pretty special, I'm going to be honest with you. I did a full unboxing video of this earlier. We did it live and obviously interacting, answering a lot of questions from the audience. So I now have a bit of an understanding of what people want to know about this, and hopefully I can answer a lot of those questions for you now. The first thing that you notice when you open this thing is the screen. It is beautiful, and I've got to say, I personally can't imagine that there is that much difference. Now, I don't have one here to test it against, but between this and the MacBook Pros with M1 Pro and M1 Max that have those mini LED displays, now I understand they're going to get brighter when you do HDR stuff, but in standard definition or standard dynamic range, which is what you're going to be doing most of your life in, I would say that this is pretty damn close. The blacks are very, very deep black. I couldn't see any kind of spill through coming from the LCD backlight, so I think that is probably less of an advantage for the MacBook Pros than most people might have imagined in the first place. The screen also seems much bigger, and I don't know if it's just because of the extra height that's added because of having the thinner bezels and the notch, but 13.6 inches versus 13.3 on the previous version, this feels much bigger, much more spacious. I would say I also do use the display scaling, and I've put it up to the most space, the smallest interface, because I think when you're right next to a MacBook like this, I don't particularly want things to be chunky. I would prefer to have more room and more space to work. That's just me. Your mileage may vary, and there is a chance that that might affect your battery life as well, because I think when you scale stuff, it can sometimes make the Mac itself work a little bit harder. But bear in mind on this that the actual resolution is almost exactly the same as the previous MacBook Air 13.3 inches. All it has added is a few extra pixels at the top, and that's basically the space that has been reclaimed from either side of the camera, which is what produces that notch that is so controversial for people. Now, in this MacBook as well, that notch is basically just there for the camera, your ambient light sensor, that kind of thing. There is no Face ID here, and we talked about this on recent shows. I think the thing that Apple is waiting for is to be able to get these components thin enough, flat enough that they can fit within the lid. Until then, that's just going to be a camera notch, I'm afraid. Now, the build quality on this thing, as you would expect, is second to none. Apple is an absolute master of building devices like this that basically feel like jewellery. And it doesn't feel as thin as the old MacBook Air, even though it is, when you actually take a look at it, very, very thin. The finish on it as well, I've gone for the midnight, and it is a lot more blue than black, I would say, in the vast majority of situations. So if you're looking for a black laptop, look somewhere else. This is not the one that you're looking for. However, it is stealthy. It looks more powerful than a MacBook Pro because of the colour, I would say, as well. This thing is really, really a cool colour, and I can't wait to actually take it out in public and be using it. I think it's going to grab quite a lot of attention. What it also does grab is some fingerprints. I know fingerprint gate is the big thing that everyone's been talking about, but it's also not an issue. It's one of those things that everyone wants to jump on. But yes, I've been playing with this. I've been handling it all day. We've been kind of putting it through its paces on some benchmarks. We've done a few other bits. And yes, you can see where you've been holding it. However, bear in mind that this has just come out of the factory, and the whole device has probably had a lot of like release fluids on it. It's been lubricated while they were machining it. It's then been anodized. It's had all of these processes go on. So this is about as raw as it will ever be. Over a little bit of time, probably over the first week or so, you will find that you will notice some fingerprints on it. As soon as that week or so is over, you'll probably not find any fingerprints on it, because as the aluminium kind of absorbs the oils and that kind of thing, it will create its own protective film. Sounds gross, I know, but remember that the aluminium on the outer surface of this is slightly porous, and basically what you're doing is refilling those pores so that it becomes, it's like varnishing something, I guess. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I don't think it's going to be something that anyone worries about after probably a week or so of owning these things, it's just something that you will get used to very, very quickly. Now, in terms of connectivity is the next thing that I've written down as notes. So what we have here is we have a pair of USB-C. So it's USB 4, which is Thunderbolt 3 on these devices, which is not as fast as the I/O that you get on the MacBook Pros, but you do also now get MagSafe, which means that you can charge it and use both those ports at the same time. I'll be honest, I'm not expecting to actually use the ports very much at all. The whole point for me of having a MacBook is that you use the MacBook, and sort of everything that you need is either on it or in the cloud and accessed remotely. So the plan for me is that my Mac Mini over here is going to basically be connected to all my hard drives, so my external storage, all of my archive disks, all that kind of thing, and then I'm going to use network sharing to be able to access them all from this. So the idea is that this won't have a huge amount of data on it. It will be more like having a terminal that is then also kind of accessing all of its data from basically a file server. I'm also going to investigate what we can do about getting those available over the internet, basically back to my Mac kind of stuff. I don't know how that works. That's not my specialty, but I think it is probably doable somehow, and we're going to work that out. And as I say, my use case for this is that the idea is that this will become my primary machine, and the Mac Mini will become kind of the backup that lives here in the office and just looks after all the stuff in the background. So backup files, this display will become one that I can pop into the office, attach to this over USB-C, and be able to use both displays as I need to, but also be able to use the extra displays with the Mac Mini as and when. You know, it's just going to be that kind of hybrid setup, so that this will become my main machine, this is where all of my stuff will live, and then this will become kind of more of a back office. In terms of how this device looks, I think it's absolutely stunning. The colour on this is just incredible. Having that really like gloss black Apple logo on the back looks insane. I do like the way that they've machined the feet out of this, even like down to the little details. Things like the screws on here are all black, just makes it all kind of stealth, all kind of disappears away. I would assume on the silver models and the starlight models it's going to have silver screws, but on this one, stealthy screws. I like that a lot. When you actually come to using this device though as well, bear in mind that the speakers that are built into this are spatial audio speakers, so that's a really interesting thing too. These things sound great, and actually the speakers fire out of this back slot here up against the screen and bounce off the screen, so it actually sounds like the sound is coming from the screen. That's a really nice touch, and I think the actual look of this device is incredibly nice. It does remind me as well of the old BlackBook, the MacBook from 2008, 2007, I think it was, where Apple did a polycarbonate of that iconically white MacBook. They also produced that in black, and that's one that I have here as well, so it's a great little comparison. When you're looking at this kind of in a darkened space, you are definitely going to see this as being a black laptop, but it has got very blue hues to it. When you take this out in the daytime, it's going to be looking really, really nice. And I think it's absolutely superb. The notch, by the way, absolutely does not bother me at all. In dark mode, it does kind of disappear into the background. There are lots of screens that you can put up, you know, in terms of wallpapers where you darken the top bar, and that's fine. And you'll find as well, whenever you go to a full screen app, it will actually black out the whole top edge of the display as well, so that notch completely disappears. And as I say, although this isn't a mini LED display, the black levels are insanely good. You cannot see the edge. When we put up a black wallpaper on the screen, we had stuff on the screen so that the actual backlight was on, but you cannot tell where the bezels start. It is incredibly dark. There is very, very little light spill through when you go from black to bezel. So don't worry if that was something you were worrying about. But on that note, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is that next size up laptop. So this is a 13.6 inch display, and the next one up from that would be a 14.1 inch MacBook Pro, and there you're also starting with an M1 Pro chip instead of the M2 that you get inside here. Now in terms of performance, you're not going to see a huge difference between M1 and this. In terms of graphics, you will. It's almost 50% faster in terms of graphics, scoring around about 30,000 on Geekbench's OpenCL scores. But if you have the budget to go for this or an entry-level MacBook Pro, which at the moment you can get refurbished or from a lot of retails for about $17.99, to get to the same specs in terms of unified memory at 16 gigabytes and at 512 gigabytes of storage, which is where you start with the MacBook Pros, this is going to cost you $15.99. So you're talking about $200 difference. And when you go up to that MacBook Pro, you are going to be getting more I/O. So if you need the option for having a couple of external monitors, that's the way to go. You are going to be getting the mini LED display, so it will get brighter when you're doing HDR workflows. You will get the extra ports. You will get a slightly bigger chassis. You won't get as much battery life though, and you will have the fans there, which is a pro and a con, because if you have the fans, you can have the noise. If you don't have the fans, you don't have the option to cool it if you are doing heavier duty workflows. And I would say that that is the key point here. This is not for heavy duty workflows, although it can handle them and it can do them. It won't stop. It won't fail at the tasks. What it will do is, if you are doing very heavy workflows a lot of the time, it is going to heat up and it is going to slow down the chips in order to cool itself down. You won't get that as much with the MacBook Pros, either with the M2 MacBook Pro, which has got the fans inside, or with the M1 Pro and M1 Max, where you've actually got a lot more power to play with. But the trade-off for that is you are going to get shorter battery life on those M1 Pro and M1 Max machines, whereas if you are doing fairly reasonable work, if you're doing anything office-based, if you're doing anything that is kind of using Pages or Keynote or Numbers or Word or Excel or any of the normal kind of office applications, video watching, basic video editing, anything along those lines, you're going to have no problems with this machine, and I would be absolutely happy to recommend it. So let me know any questions you've got in the comments for me, so that we can do a lot more videos around what you think of this device, and I would love to hear your questions. So hashtag #ICaveAnswers down in the comments section, and I'll get them answered for you in a future video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.